They hauled my car away at 6 in the morning on a Tuesday without even bothering to ask what was under that cover. I came back from a business trip just in time to see a tow truck dragging off something they assumed was garbage. The HOA president stood there, arms crossed, wearing that smug little grin like she'd just done the neighborhood a favor by removing an eyesore. Curtains shifted as neighbors peeked from their windows, enjoying the show as if it were primetime entertainment. The crunch of gravel echoed under my shoes as I walked up to my now empty driveway. Diesel fumes hung in the air, mixing with the scent of their perfectly trimmed lawns and the stench of self-importance. They thought they knew what was hidden under that tarp. They thought wrong. About the car, about me, and about who truly had the upper hand here. What would you do if your neighbors jumped to conclusions about you like that? Tell me in the comments. Where are you tuning in from? And have you ever faced an HOA nightmare of your own? Let me back up and explain how I got here. My name's Marcus. I'm 48, and 6 months ago, I was crawling out of the ugliest divorce you could imagine. 2 decades of marriage, gone. My ex walked away with the mansion, half my retirement, and custody of the 2 teenagers who barely made eye contact with me anymore. So there I was, starting fresh in my late 40s. I needed something smaller, a place that felt like mine, not a monument to everything I'd lost. That's how I ended up with a corner townhouse in Willowbrook Estates, a gated community of 847 homes, priced anywhere from $800,000 to $2.3 million, the kind of place where every driveway has a German car and the lawns look photoshopped. The smell of fresh mulch greets you the moment you drive in, with the hum of leaf blowers in the background and the occasional yapping of some overpriced designer dog. But what sold me wasn't the landscaping. It was the 3-car garage, because I had something to protect. My Uncle Raymond had passed away the year before, leaving me his most treasured possession, a 1967 Ferrari 275 GTB. Raymond was eccentric, a sharp businessman who never showed his whole hand. He always told, "Me, Marcus, real worth hides in plain sight. People only see what they expect, not what's actually there." Turns out he left behind more than just a car. The Ferrari looked rough, faded paint, worn seats, but under that surface was a numbers-matching classic with museum-level provenance and 30 years of meticulous records. While I researched restoration shops, I kept it under a plain gray tarp. Nothing suspicious, just protection. That's when I met Diane Blackwell. Picture your stereotype of an HOA president. BMW X7, athleisure outfits that have never seen a workout, and a smile sharp enough to draw blood. She was 52, married to Craig, a pharmaceutical sales guy, with 2 private school kids because, as she'd tell you, public schools just aren't what they used to be. Diane had been HOA president 3 terms straight. From my experience, people who cling to petty power usually do it because they can't handle anything bigger. On my 3rd day after moving in, there was a knock at my door. Diane stood there with that polished fake smile. "Welcome to the neighborhood. Just curious about the situation with the vehicle in your driveway." I explained it was a classic car, temporarily covered. Her smile tightened like a stretched wire. Well, here in Willowbrook we hold to certain standards. Have you read the covenants?" She handed me an unofficial violation notice. Not legally binding, but intimidating enough. The cheap paper scratched against my fingers, and her heavy perfume mingled with what I could only describe as the smell of pure arrogance. That night, I read every line of the HOA rules. And here's what I found. No rule against covered vehicles under 30 days. Diane wasn't enforcing the law. She was testing me, seeing if I'd fold like the others. She didn't stop there. That same night, she kicked off a neighborhood. Text thread, "New guy thinks he's above the rules." Within a week, I was getting the full suburban freeze-out. Conversations cut off when I walked up. Cold stares at the mailbox, whispers that died the second I passed. That became my daily soundtrack. It wasn't about the car. It was about Diane flexing her authority over the outsider, what I didn't. Know yet was that my uncle had left me more than a Ferrari. He left me something much larger, something that would flip Diane's power trip upside down. But before that, she was about to push this feud to a level she'd regret. Because in Willowbrook Estates' appearances were deceiving. And Diane Blackwell was about to discover that assumptions can cost you dearly, backing down. That wasn't her style. 2 weeks after our doorstep standoff, I got a certified letter. Emergency HOA board meeting, 48 hours notice. Regarding community aesthetic concerns. Location, Diane's house. I'd sat through enough boardrooms to recognize a power move. Meetings are supposed to happen on neutral ground, but Diane wanted home field advantage, betting I'd feel small on her turf. The night of the meeting, I pulled up to her place, one of those cookie-cutter colonials that screamed, "High school glory days." From the driveway, the cloying smell of vanilla candles hit me so hard you'd think she was masking something rotten. Craig answered the door, beer in hand, at 7 o'clock sharp. Real classy. Inside, she staged this mock courtroom. 4 board members lined up behind her kitchen island like it's the bench of the Supreme Court, one solitary chair set across from them, my seat. My footsteps bounce off the granite counters as I take it. Somewhere behind me I can hear Craig hovering, no doubt rehearsing his role as the supportive spouse. "Marcus," Diane says, sliding a manila folder across the counter like she's unveiling top-secret files. "We've received multiple complaints regarding your situation." She cracks it open with a dramatic flourish. Inside, Ring doorbell snapshots, printed out neighbor emails, and what looks suspiciously like a property value study she must have pulled off Google 10 minutes before I showed up. "Property values are in danger," she announces. "Children are asking uncomfortable questions. Willowbrook has standards." As I listen to this performance, I can't help but appreciate her nerve. Somehow my Ferrari has been cast as the neighborhood villain. But here's the thing about bullies. They assume their target comes unprepared. I reach into my briefcase and lay out my own folder, neatly organized, highlighted, and cross-referenced. Every page of the Willowbrook HOA covenants. The sound of those papers hitting granite cuts through that vanilla-scented kitchen. "Point me to the exact violation, Diane." She blinks. The other board members shuffle like kids caught without their homework. It's about community standards. I'm all for standards. That's why I've actually read the legal documents. I flip to section 4.27. Covered vehicles permitted up to 30 days without board approval. Section 6. 1.3 requires written notice before enforcement. Where's mine? Here's the reality most homeowners don't know. HOA disputes often arise because residents never read the covenants they signed at closing. Those documents lay out exact steps boards are required to follow, and most never do. Janet, one of the board members, clears her throat. "Maybe we should postpone until legal can review." Diane's face cycles through 5 shades of red. What was supposed to be her intimidation session has turned into a civics lesson. And she's not the one teaching it. "Fine," she says through clenched teeth. Tabled for further investigation, I gather my things, thank the board, and head out. Victory, right? Not exactly. Next morning, 3 piles of dog waste appear neatly arranged on my lawn. An anonymous note waits in my mailbox. "Trashy car, for trashy people." In 18 months of living in a dog-friendly neighborhood, nothing like this had ever happened. But the real escalation came later that afternoon. Returning from errands, I spotted Diane showing a house 2 streets over. Normal real estate stuff until I caught her sales pitch. "Charming neighborhood," she said, "though we do have some unfortunate new additions affecting the look of the community." And that's when it hit me. This had nothing to do with HOA rules. It was business. Diane had been running a little operation, pushing out residents who didn't fit her image, then cashing commissions on the resales. My resistance wasn't just undermining her authority, it was messing with her income. So, I did what anyone sensible would do. Went home and installed a full security system. Cameras covering every corner, cloud backups, motion alerts. The works. Something told me her next move might be worth recording. But while I mounted those cameras, my thoughts drifted to Uncle Raymond. He always stayed 3 steps ahead. What if he'd foreseen something like this? What if that Ferrari wasn't the only legacy he left behind? That night, I dug deeper into his old files. Really dug. buried in a folder labeled Willowbrook Development. 1987. I uncovered something that made me sink into my chair. Uncle Raymond hadn't just bought a car in the 60s. He'd been knee-deep in real estate. Far deeper than I ever knew. A twist that changed everything. Diane Blackwell wasn't just picking on the wrong neighbor, she was stirring up the wrong family entirely. But Diane wasn't about to let one legal defeat slow her down. Within 2 days, she escalated to psychological warfare. She organized a neighborhood watch safety meeting. Everyone invited but me. I found out the same way you uncover most suburban conspiracies. My cameras dot groups of neighbors filing past my house like funeral mourners, each carrying the same flyer. The crunch of their footsteps on my driveway gravel suddenly sounded sharper, judgmental. Next morning, a petition landed on my doorstep, clarifying community vehicle standards. 23 signatures by lunchtime. Craig, suddenly Mr. Popular, casually dropping to other husbands on dog walks that unclear rules might drag down property values. The slam of garage doors whenever I drove past had become the unofficial soundtrack of my neighborhood. Real classy people. But Diane had an ace up her sleeve. She arranged another casual talk, this time dragging along some legal firepower. Her brother-in-law, Brandon, who she claimed was an attorney. Claimed being the key word, because everything about him screamed strip mall lawyer trying to cosplay as a litigator. They ambushed me at my mailbox on Thursday evening. Brandon showed up in a bargain bin suit that hung off him like a potato sack, lugging a briefcase held together by duct tape and sheer optimism, practicing his serious lawyer look in the reflection of my car window. "Marcus," Diane began, her voice dripping with fake concern, "we need to address the liability issues your vehicle is creating." Brandon cleared his throat like he was about to deliver the State of the Union. "Several residents have raised safety concerns regarding unknown vehicle contents. There could be homeowners' insurance complications affecting the entire community." The stench of his drugstore cologne mixing with Diane's desperation was stomach-turning. Meanwhile, kids laughed in the backyards around us, their joy a jarring contrast to this sidewalk courtroom drama. "You've got 72 hours to remove that cover," Brandon went on, producing a very official-looking document that probably came straight from a Google template. "Or face legal action to protect community standards. Here's something most people don't realize. Anyone can claim to represent the HOA, but actual authority requires a formal board resolution. Always ask to see the specific documentation granting them that power. Most of these threats are just pricey letterhead disguising hot air. I did what any half-decent tech exec with time and a severance check would do. Research. Brandon Kowalski. ESQ turned out to be a DUI lawyer who dabbled in cut-rate real estate closings. His reviews? Brutal. 2.5 stars filled with complaints about missed hearings and ignored calls. More importantly, I checked with the HOA's actual attorney. Listed in my purchase documents, surprise twist, Brandon had zero authority to act on behalf of anyone. His legal advice was worth exactly what I'd paid for it. By Friday night, I was standing at Diane's front door, this time with real legal firepower, our HOA attorney Maria Gonzalez, on speakerphone. The doorbell felt different under my finger. I wasn't the target anymore. "Diane," I said, "we need to talk about Brandon's unauthorized lawyering problem." She opened the door with that rehearsed smile, but behind her eyes was panic, flickering like a dying bulb. "I don't understand. Your brother-in-law's been playing attorney without authority. Maria, would you explain?" Maria's voice crackled through my phone. "Miss Blackwell, legal representation requires explicit board authorization through my office. Mr. Kowalski has no authority to make demands or issue threats." Watching Diane's realization hit was like watching a building implode in slow motion. Craig shuffled in behind her, nervously fiddling with his keys. Through their open door, I spotted something on the counter. Foreclosure notices. Suddenly it all made sense. This wasn't about community rules. Diane was drowning financially, and her HOA president paycheck was probably the only steady income they had. My pushback threatened her entire survival plan. "This is harassment," she sputtered, flipping into victim mode. "You're trying To destroy our community! I'm protecting it from bogus legal threats, I shot back. I expect a written apology for the harassment by Sunday, or this goes to the state bar. Her door slammed shut, echoing through the evening. But it wasn't anger in the sound. It was desperation. The weekend brought interesting developments. 3 board members texted, asking for private chats. 2 neighbors stopped by with awkward apologies. Someone even launched an anonymous Willowbrook Truth account exposing board overreach. Cracks were forming in Diane's empire. But beneath it all, I smelled something sharp and dangerous. The scent of cornered desperation. And when people are sinking, they'll cling to anything, even if it drags them under. Monday morning proved it. An emergency board meeting. 24 hours notice, already a violation of our bylaws, which require 72. But desperate people don't care about rules they've been breaking all along. The agenda? Simple and lethal. Vote to amend vehicle storage rules and expel disruptive residents. Diane was going nuclear, changing the rules retroactively to make my Ferrari a violation, then booting me altogether. Her desperation was so thick you could cut it with a butter knife. And here's where her real cunning showed. She'd stacked the deck with proxy votes, clients and contacts from her real estate network, people who didn't even live in Willowbrook, but held powers of attorney from relatives, plus a few friendly favors. She was planning to flood the room with fake votes and bulldoze her amendments through. I spent Monday night like any strategist worth his salt, digging. I cross-referenced her attendee list with county voting records, property ownership data, and HOA membership rolls. The feel of those papers between my fingers was like evidence solidifying, and that's exactly what it was. By meeting night, the atmosphere was electric, like a public execution. Diane had reserved the community center and packed it with her ringers. 67% attendance, she bragged, except only 34% were actual Willowbrook residents. She stood at the front like she was accepting an Oscar, complete with a PowerPoint. All vehicles must remain visible and identifiable at all times, she announced. Daily fines of $50 for non-compliance, effective immediately. The click of her laser pointer against the projection screen grated like nails on a chalkboard. Behind me, Craig whispered instructions to people, clearly coaching them on how to vote. This amendment will ensure our community maintains the standards that protect our property values, Diane proclaimed, waving dramatically at photos she'd taken of my covered Ferrari from every possible angle. I sat quietly in the back, jotting detailed notes, phone recording everything. Virginia's a one-party consent state, in case you're wondering. Diane's confidence swelled with every nod from her planted audience. She actually believes she's already won. Here's a little-known fact most people overlook. HOA proxy votes are only valid if they come from confirmed residents who can't attend in person, not random friends doing favors for board members. Always insist on proof of voting eligibility. If proxy votes aren't legitimate, the entire meeting, and every decision made during it, can be thrown out. When the vote is called, Diane's grin could power the Las Vegas Strip. 23 in favor, 8 against. The amendment passes, effective immediately. She's practically glowing as she declares that starting tomorrow, I'll be fined $50 a day unless I remove my car cover. Any other business? She asks, scanning the room like a monarch surveying her court. I rise slowly, my chair groaning in the sudden hush. I'd like a copy of the official vote tally and the verified attendance list. Her smile falters. That's not necessary. Actually, it is, I reply. I'll need to cross-check voting eligibility with county records per state HOA oversight regulations. The room fills with uneasy shuffling. A few of her so-called proxy voters are suddenly glued to their phones, and I can almost smell the fear mingling with the industrial carpet's stale scent. Motion to adjourn, Craig blurts out. Too late. That night, I matched every attendee's address with voter registration records. 11 people who cast ballots didn't even live in Willowbrook Estates. 3 more turned out to be Diane's relatives, using their parents' old addresses. The amendment vote wasn't just questionable, it was a complete fraud. But Diane wasn't finished. By Thursday morning, an official violation notice appeared under my door. Immediate removal of the car cover plus a $200 administrative fee. Daily fines of $50 to begin within 48 hours. And the kicker? Authorization to tow my vehicle if I didn't comply. She had just handed me a smoking gun. I spent the day assembling my evidence packet. Fraudulent voting records, unapproved proxy, verifications, bylaw breaches, and a harassment timeline. Everything neatly organized, cross-referenced, and ready to submit to the State HOA Oversight Board. I also called Angela Torres, the Channel 7 investigative reporter known for exposing HOA corruption. Let's just say she was very eager to cover. A story about proxy vote fraud and board embezzlement. Still, I held back from sending it. While sorting the evidence, I kept thinking about a file I'd found among Uncle Raymond's papers. Willowbrook Development, 1987. Time to see what other secrets he had left me. That mini twist would change everything. Because Deanne hadn't just been bullying a random neighbor. She'd picked a fight with someone who had far more power in this community than she could ever dream. Friday night, I finally opened Uncle Raymond's Willowbrook Development 1987. Folder, bourbon in one hand, and reading glasses perched on my nose. What I discovered made me set the glass down very carefully and read through everything twice. Uncle Raymond hadn't just bought a Ferrari in 1967. He'd been playing a much bigger game. The documents were sharp, professional, and staggering. Meridian Holdings LLC, incorporated in Delaware, 1985. Primary asset, 847 acres of farmland in Fairfax County, purchased in 1987 for $340,000. Development partner, Willowbrook Construction Group. Total investment, $78 million. Uncle Raymond's ownership stake, 6-7%. As I read, the scent of old tobacco and leather from his briefcase mingled with the bourbon, and suddenly it all clicked. The Ferrari wasn't the real inheritance. It was bait, designed to push me deeper. When I cross-referenced the corporate filings with my property deed, my hands shook. Every homeowner in Willowbrook Estates, including Diane Blackwell, was technically my tenant. Uncle Raymond had built the entire development as a ground lease community. The houses were owned by the residents, but the land beneath, the streets, the common areas, everything, belonged to Meridian Holdings. The homeowners leased the ground through 47-year agreements. Every monthly HOA payment included a ground lease fee flowing straight into Meridian Holdings. Straight to me. The legal documents suddenly felt heavier, almost alive. They weren't just papers, they were proof that I owned the very ground Deanne strutted across. Here's the financial reality that made my head spin. For the past 18 months, I'd been unknowingly receiving $127,000 a month in ground lease payments deposited directly into Uncle Raymond's old business account, an account I'd never once checked. The balance sat untouched at $2.3 million, quietly collecting interest. And Deanne's embezzlement? She hadn't been stealing from the HOA. She'd been stealing from my company. But the legal implications went even further. The HOA had no authority over landowner rights. Every fine, every vote, every threat Diane had issued was legally meaningless. I had the power to terminate ground leases for harassment, to restrict access to shared areas, even to control utility easements. I called Maria Gonzalez, Uncle Raymond's estate attorney, who had been discreetly managing Meridian Holdings all these years. Her voice carried a smile as I finally asked the right questions. "Your uncle always said this day would come," she told me. "He knew eventually someone would challenge your right to live peacefully here. He wanted you to first learn patience, then use power wisely." The emotional weight hit me like a freight train. Uncle Raymond had orchestrated this entire lesson. He knew that joining an upscale community would inevitably bring conflict with small-minded people like Diane. The covered Ferrari wasn't just a car, it was a test. Maria added. "Diane Blackwell has been harassing her own landlord while embezzling from his company. That's grounds for lease termination under Section 12 of the Ground Lease Agreement." I could end it instantly. One phone call and Deanne would be forced to sell her home at a devastating loss. But then, tucked behind the corporate documents, I found Uncle Raymond's note. One final message that gave me pause. Some people admire strength, others admire fairness. The trick is knowing how to use whichever one you hold. The irony was almost too good. Diane had been clawing for control over land that wasn't hers, making threats backed by authority she didn't actually have, all while stealing money from the very person she thought she could bully. And there I was, facing a decision. Go for quick revenge, or turn it into a lesson that could ripple through the whole neighborhood. Uncle Raymond had equipped me for either path. The real question wasn't if I had power, it was deciding how to wield it. Saturday morning, I sat in my kitchen with Uncle Raymond's files spread out across the granite counter like a general preparing for battle. The sharp smell of coffee, mingled with the dusty odor of legal records older than me, creating a surreal blend of past and present. Time to call in reinforcements. First call, Maria Gonzalez, Uncle Raymond's estate lawyer, and now my secret weapon. She showed up at noon, briefcase packed with corporate documents, smile sharp enough to cut glass. Your uncle would be proud, she said, laying out lease termination protocols. Harassment and intimidation are direct violations. We've got grounds. Second ally, Detective Jake Morrison, retired Fairfax County and my neighbor from 3 doors down. Jake had been observing Diane's antics like a case study. I've been tracking her harassment, he told me, flipping open a worn composition notebook filled with timestamps, witness accounts, and photos. She's building a textbook stalking file. The weight of his careful handwriting felt like justice forming right in my hands. Third recruit, Sarah Chen, forensic accountant and an old colleague from my tech career. She strolled in with her laptop and that unmistakable grin she wore whenever she smelled fraud. HOA embezzlement is my specialty, she said. Give me a day with the records. By Sunday evening, we regrouped around my kitchen table. Sarah's spreadsheet glowed on my screen, a roadmap to Diane's downfall. Systematic theft, she reported. Phony consulting fees, kickbacks from contractors, inflated maintenance charges, $94,000 siphoned in 2 years. Jake slid his folder across. Escalation pattern, verbal abuse, property damage, bogus legal threats. Any prosecutor would call this organized intimidation. Maria tapped her pen against the lease violations. Ground lease terms prohibit harassment of the landowner. 30 days' notice is standard, but given her documented behavior, we can move faster. That's when Uncle Raymond's brilliance came fully into view. I pulled out Tommy Reeves's authentication report. Ferrari appraiser, ASE certified, 40 years in the trade. The car's value, $2.1 million at auction. Original invoice from 1967, $11,400. My uncle had purchased a masterpiece and let everyone believe it was scrap. The psychological angle was perfect. Diane had been fighting tooth and nail to get rid of what she thought was garbage, never realizing it was worth more than entire homes. Here's a little truth worth remembering. Ground. Lease agreements give landowners ultimate authority over tenants. Even in HOA neighborhoods, most residents don't realize they're basically renting the dirt their houses sit on. Maria laid out the strategy in stages. Phase 1. Reveal the car during Diane's next harassment stunt. Phase 2. Present the financial evidence to the HOA board. Phase 3. Announce ownership rights at a community meeting. Phase 4. Escalate to the media if she refused to back off. Jake outlined the surveillance plan. Extra cameras covering every angle, body-worn recorders, encrypted backups. From here on, we capture everything. And the community network was already working. 3 neighbors had quietly reached out, sharing their own experiences with Diane's bullying. Jake spotted the pattern. She targeted anyone who didn't fit her narrow idea of acceptable and drove them out through intimidation. Sarah revealed the leverage I now held. You don't just own the dirt, she explained. You control the utilities, the easements, the common areas, the funding streams. You hold the backbone of this community. Another truth worth noting, most HOA disputes can be cracked wide open by looking into who actually owns the land beneath the houses. People rarely check. Then Tommy arrived with the final piece, full Ferrari restoration records, matching numbers, original paint codes, half a century of service history. This car belongs in a museum, he said. Your uncle preserved it flawlessly. The media play was just as critical. Angela Torres from Channel 7 had already expressed interest. HOA. President caught embezzling while harassing the rightful landowner? Maria mused. That's prime time. But I also had to prepare myself mentally. With Maria's coaching, I practiced delivering the ownership reveal calmly, rehearsed Diane's possible reactions, and braced for whatever retaliation she might. The deeper I dug into the files, the clearer it became. I had control over water access, sewer lines, roads, landscaping contracts. The HOA's authority crumbled once the landowner enforced their rights. By the end of Sunday. Our plan was airtight. Maria would draft violation notices, Jake would run surveillance, Sarah would present the forensic financials. Tommy would handle the Ferrari reveal. The rustle of papers as we organized the evidence felt like fate locking into place. Uncle Raymond hadn't just left me property, he'd left me the means to deliver a hard lesson about respect, justice, and the price of arrogance. Phase 1 would begin with Diane's next move. And with Diane, that was only a matter of time. Her desperation finally hit rock bottom at 5:47 a.m. Tuesday morning. I'm jolted awake by the growl of a diesel engine and the metallic whine of hydraulics, a tow truck reversing into my driveway. From my bedroom window, I see her orchestrating the scene, posturing like a suburban Napoleon. Craig hovers nearby, dutifully recording every second on his phone for evidence. The tow operator, a hefty man with the weary look of someone who's seen every car dispute under the sun, eyes my covered Ferrari with careful professionalism. I slip into a bathrobe, grab my coffee mug, and step outside, playing it casual. As if I'm just checking the morning paper. Jake's already out on his porch, camera in hand, retired cop instincts buzzing. "Morning, everyone," I call pleasantly. "Perfect day for a little Grand Theft Auto." The operator freezes mid-step. "Sir, I have HOA authorization." "Let's see it." He hands over a flimsy work order signed by Diane, claiming, "Abandoned vehicle, safety hazard." The cheap paper crumples in my hand, nothing like the weighty legal documents I've been buried in lately. Then Diane emerges from Craig's BMW like a triumphant general, clipboard raised as if it were a sword. "Finally enforcing the rules, Marcus," she crows, voice sharp with victory. "That's $350 in daily fines plus towing. Should have listened." By now, garage doors are rumbling open up and down the street. Mrs. Patterson, the Martinez family. Even the teenagers, usually comatose until noon. The neighborhood is gathering for this little suburban spectacle. I sip my coffee. "Before you haul anything off, maybe you'd like to see exactly what you're towing." Walking to the Ferrari, I rest my hand on the car cover. The crowd presses closer, kids tugging at parents, phones rising into the air like periscopes. "What's under there, Mr. Marcus?" Little Sarah Martinez pipes up, her innocent voice slicing through the tension. "Why don't we find out?" With one smooth motion, I pull the cover away. Gasps ripple through the crowd like they've just witnessed a magic act. Morning sunlight hits the Ferrari's freshly restored Rosso Corsa finish, chrome wire wheels sparkling, every curve screaming Italian perfection. The tow operator lets out a low whistle. "That's a real Ferrari." Diane's face flickers between confusion, disbelief, and fury, like watching a soul collapse in real time. Craig lowers his phone, suddenly unwilling to keep filming. Neighbors who'd been avoiding me for weeks now look ready to melt into the pavement. "It's beautiful, Marcus," Sarah whispers, genuine awe in her voice. "How much is something like that worth?" one of the husbands asks. I produce Tommy's. Authentication papers with a bit of flair. Restoration estimate, about $2.10 million. The tow operator takes a big step back, palms raised. "Not touching a $2 million car. You didn't tell me this was a Ferrari, lady." But Diane, ever stubborn, presses forward. "Doesn't matter what it's worth. Rules apply to everyone." The shift in the crowd is immediate. Sympathy evaporates. Craig tugs at her arm, murmuring warnings, but she's too blinded by her own power trip to see she's on the edge. "Anyone here think this looks like junk?" I ask the crowd, a ripple of nervous laughter. Kids beg their parents for a closer look. The tide has turned completely, and Diane stands stranded, authority slipping away. That's when I deliver the first blow. "Diane, there's something you should know." I hold up my phone, Maria already cued on speed dial. "You've been trying to tow your landlord's car." The look on her face, worth every minute of the last 18 months of harassment. I own the land beneath your house through a ground lease. Every HOA payment you make includes rent to my company, Meridian Holdings. You've been tormenting your landlord while siphoning money from my business." The collective gasp from the crowd is almost physical. Craig goes ghost pale as the implications register. Phones come out. Google searches fly. "That's impossible," Diane whispers. I present Uncle Raymond's notarized corporate paperwork. 67% ownership of the land under this entire community, which means your little embezzlement scheme. You've been stealing from me. The tow truck rumbles away without the Ferrari. Neighbors close in, some apologizing, some desperate to distance themselves from Diane's sinking ship. Jake's video is already online, flooding the Willowbrook Truth page with updates. But I can sense it, the dangerous tension of a cornered animal about to lash out. And lash out she does. That evening, by 6, emergency meeting notices are taped to every door. The agenda? Straight out of a dictator's playbook. Expel fraudulent. Residents pursue legal action against disruptive elements. Diane's meltdown lands with all the grace of a car bomb. The stench of desperation clings to every word, thick enough to bottle and sell as panic cologne. But her strategy reveals her true cruelty. She isn't just plotting to evict me. She wants to obliterate my reputation first. Her real estate circle becomes a rumor mill, whispers of stolen cars, shady money, criminal fraud. Suddenly, I'm painted as everything from drug dealer to tax cheat. Meanwhile, Commissara's forensic accounting uncovers the truth. Diane is 3 months behind on her mortgage, foreclosure already filed, her business collapsing in the market downturn. This was never about HOA compliance. This was survival. By Wednesday night, the emergency meeting feels like a trap. Diane has stacked the community center with her loyalists. Craig, looking miserable, Brandon, the fake lawyer, sweating through his polyester suit, and the 2 board members still drinking her Cool-Aid. The air reeks of industrial carpet, fear, and cheap coffee, a perfect setting for suburban warfare. And outside, parked in the lot, Channel 7's Angela Torres just happens to be waiting with her news crew. Someone tipped her off. Definitely not me. Diane kicks things off with a polished speech straight out of McCarthy's playbook. "Ladies and gentlemen," she proclaims, "we've been infiltrated by someone who lied about who he is and what he wants. She's even upgraded to PowerPoint, complete with photos of my Ferrari, screenshots of property records, and a carefully laid out timeline of supposed deceit. Each click of her laser pointer against the projection screen sounds less like evidence and more like the ticking clock on her own downfall. Marcus Reynolds has been pretending to be a legitimate resident while orchestrating a complex real estate scam, she insists, flashing half-truths and cropped documents that twist the story her way. Brandon rises with his legal pad in hand, like a prosecutor about to grill a witness in a murder trial. "We have proof of fraudulent property claims and potential identity theft," he asserts. The board moves to suspend his residency while we investigate. From the back row, Maria and I scribble notes while Diane effectively builds her own. Gallows. The room hums with anxious whispers, neighbors cutting suspicious glances my way. The herd mentality has taken hold. Any resident engaged in fraud forfeits their right to remain in this community, Diane pushes on. Tonight we vote to begin removal proceedings. That's my cue. Slowly I stand, my chair dragging across the floor with a screech like nails on a chalkboard. "Diane," I say evenly, "before you call the police on your own landlord, maybe we should look at the entire set of financial records." Maria pops open her briefcase with the kind of flair a stage magician would envy, pulling out Sarah's forensic report. The shuffle of official papers slices through the tension like a blade. "Ladies and gentlemen," I address the crowd, "I submit evidence of systemic embezzlement carried out by your HOA president." The PowerPoint flickers, Sarah's spreadsheets now replacing Diane's slideshow of half-truths. Consulting fees that never existed, bloated maintenance contracts, kickbacks, all traced through bank statements and corporate filings. $94,000 siphoned off in just 2 years, I continue, from Meridian Holdings, which owns 67% of the very land beneath your homes. The crowd's mood flips instantly. Diane's complexion cycles through shades of white as her credibility collapses in real time. Brandon makes his fatal blunder. This is fake. Marcus Reynolds doesn't own anything here. Maria steps forward, calm and firm. Maria Gonzalez, estate attorney for Meridian Holdings LLC. Here are certified ownership documents, ground leases, and state filings. The rustle of paperwork fills the room. Neighbors pull out their own deeds, murmuring about lease agreements they never really understood. The truth dawns. They've been targeting their landlord for months. Motion for no confidence in the current president, Janet from the board calls out. Seconded, echo three other voices. Craig physically escorts Diane toward the exit as Channel 7's cameras capture her unraveling. This isn't over, she screams. I'll sue everyone. Andiyet. Dr. slams shut, but her fate is sealed. Board vote 51 for her removal, Craig abstaining because he's already outside. The aftermath is immediate: an emergency election, restitution for stolen funds, and the press sparking an investigation into Diane's real estate license. But what lingers in the air is sweeter, the unmistakable scent of justice. 3 weeks later, the healing meeting arrives with all the spectacle of a local election. I pull up to the community center in the Ferrari, now the neighborhood's unofficial mascot. The V12's purr draws kids to the windows like moths. To flame. Angela Torres and her Channel 7 crew return for the follow-up. Cameras roll as residents pack the hall, the smell of fresh coffee mixing with nervous anticipation, and, for once, the sense that democracy might actually be working. No. Diane this time. Her house now boasts a glaring red for sale sign. Might as well read foreclosure special. Craig has vanished into the background, no doubt rehearsing his just following orders defense for an impending divorce lawyer. The meeting begins with Sarah Martinez, the kindergarten teacher everyone trusts, calling order with a wooden gavel that lands like the sound of justice knocking. First priority, she announces, is establishing transparency so this never happens again. Jake Morrison takes his oath as security liaison, his retired detective status lending instant credibility. The contrast with Diane's tyrannical reign couldn't be sharper. These people are here to serve, not exploit. When Sarah invites me to the podium, the grain of the worn wood beneath my hands feels worlds away from Diane's kitchen counter interrogations. This is collaborative, voluntary, real. 3 weeks ago, I begin, my voice steady, we were reminded how dangerous assumptions can be. The room is riveted. Parents with kids in their laps, teenagers actually looking up from their phones, neighbors who once scowled at me now leaning forward. My Uncle Raymond left me more than property and a car. He left me a lesson about patience, about letting people reveal who they truly are before rushing to judge. Faces around the room soften, shifting from suspicion to remorse to hope. Today I'm creating the Raymond Chen Memorial Fund in honor of my uncle's full name, which he kept private during his life. The crowd rustles through their agendas. Surprised, this wasn't listed. $2.3 million in accumulated lease funds will go toward an annual scholarship for local graduates pursuing engineering or business. The applause begins tentatively, then swells until it shakes the walls. Angela signals her cameraman to catch the reactions. $50,000 a year overseen by an elected community committee, I add. And our first recipient, Jake Morrison's granddaughter studying mechanical engineering at Virginia Tech. Jake's eyes brim as the room rises in ovation, the sound of clapping and chairs scraping echoing like thunder. The air itself seems laced with gratitude, coffee, and the salt of joyful tears. But I'm not finished. We're also launching a community improvement fund, new playgrounds, an organic garden for food bank donations, and an annual classic car show to support local charities. More applause. I raise my hand for silence. And because actions have consequences, we're instituting mandatory transparency, monthly reports, open books, and third-party audits. Never again will this community be left in the dark. Here's the takeaway. In HOA disputes, document everything: video, audio, financials. Not just for court, but as the bedrock for rebuilding trust. Angela approaches with her microphone. Marcus, how does it feel to turn conflict into something positive for your community? I smile. My uncle always said real wealth isn't what you own. It's knowing who you can trust. and this community has proven itself worthy of that trust. Outside, the Ferrari gleams in the parking lot, not as a symbol of division anymore, but of transformation. Children line up excitedly, each waiting for a turn behind the wheel while parents swap tales of their own HOA nightmares from different neighborhoods. The irony is striking. Diane's campaign of harassment collapsed so spectacularly that it sparked reforms spreading to other communities through media attention. Her effort to shatter one person's peace instead birthed a template for HOA reform now studied by developers across the region. As the meeting wrapped up, neighbors came forward with stories of intimidation they had once been too scared to reveal. The long-standing pattern of harassment against anyone who didn't meet Diane's narrow definition of a proper resident was finally unmasked and ended. The sense of triumph was overwhelming. Children's laughter rising over the roar of Ferrari engine demos, the scent of barbecue from our spontaneous block party, warm handshakes and heartfelt hugs from people who had shunned me only weeks before. Justice delivered with a side of community healing, exactly what Uncle Raymond would have hoped for. The golden sunset reflecting off perfectly restored chrome felt like a sign this chapter was closing, just right. 6 months later. Willowbrook. Estates appeared on the cover of Virginia Living magazine, celebrated as a model HOA. Property values rose 12%, neighbor satisfaction soared, and my Ferrari became a fixture at regional car shows, raising money for local charities. The Raymond Chen Memorial Fund awarded its first scholarships that May, 5 local students pursuing engineering and business degrees, led by Jake Morrison's granddaughter at Virginia Tech. Watching her step across the graduation stage to accept the award, I could almost feel Uncle Raymond's pride in the air, mingling with the scent of fresh flowers and the energy of new beginnings. The community garden blossomed into something remarkable. Residents grew produce for the food bank, children learned where food really comes from, and neighbors worked side by side instead of competing. The sound of kids laughing as they plucked tomatoes replaced the hushed conversations and slammed. Garage doors of Diane's rule. A's for Diane. She relocated to North Carolina, where real estate licensing standards seem more forgiving. Her marriage survived, barely, and Craig found steady work selling medical devices. From time to time, anonymous donations land in the scholarship fund, and I have my guesses about the source. Redemption has many faces. My own life settled into rhythm as well. Sarah Martinez and I began dating once the chaos subsided. No rush, just 2 adults who discovered they enjoyed each other's company while working side by side at planning meetings. The kids gave their blessing, which meant more to me than I expected. The Ferrari restoration reached museum-grade quality, valued at $2.4 million in Tommy's latest appraisal. But its true worth lies in what it represents. A transformation from hidden relic to community symbol, exactly what Uncle Raymond had intended. Here's the final takeaway tying it all together. Always research property ownership history before buying into an HOA. You may uncover hidden rights, obligations, or even opportunities to spark positive change. The ripples keep spreading. Angela Torres won a regional Emmy for her investigative series on HOA abuse, and our story is now a case study in journalism programs about uncovering human interest in local politics. 3 other communities have asked me to consult on similar battles. HOA overreach is far more widespread than people realize. Maria's law firm now specializes in land leases and property rights disputes, helping owners rediscover forgotten leverage. Jake launched a security consulting firm for HOAs. Sarah expanded her accounting practice into auditing HOA finances. Everyone found purpose in the aftermath, and the broader social impact exceeded anything I imagined. Our annual classic car show now draws hundreds, raising more than $75,000 last year for homeless services and food banks. The Community Festival links 5 surrounding neighborhoods, bridging old divides. But the most gratifying change? Monthly HOA meetings filled with residents who actually participate. Transparent budgets, collaborative decisions, real community spirit. We turned Diane's dictatorship into a functioning democracy, proving small-scale governance works when fairness triumphs over power. The personal healing surprised me most. My teenagers grew closer after seeing me take a stand instead of just griping. They now split their time evenly between homes, and even my ex admits, reluctantly, that I've changed. Uncle Raymond's lessons became part of me. Patience before reaction, preparation over emotion, Justice above revenge. His letter, found in the Ferrari's glove box, said it best: "True victory improves life for everyone. The sensory closing feels right. Ferrari humming as I drive to speaking engagements, flowers blooming in the garden, the smooth leather wheel guiding me toward new paths. In the rearview mirror, grateful neighbors wave goodbye, but the road ahead promises more than any backward glance. So here's my challenge for you. What's your HOA horror story? Drop it in the comments. Your experience might help someone else. Spot the warning signs before things spiral, and if this story gave you clarity on your property rights or hope that justice can beat petty tyrants, hit subscribe. Next week, we'll cover the woman who discovered her subdivision pool legally belonged to her grandmother's estate. You won't want to miss that. Remember, knowledge is power, patience is strategy, and sometimes the best revenge is simply living well while lifting your community with you. The roar of that Ferrari echoing through a stronger neighborhood tells me Uncle Raymond would be proud of what his wisdom set in motion. Another HOA saga closed. If this one made you shake your head or pump your fist, smash that like button, share your own experience below, and subscribe so you don't miss the next battle in the BBS.